شرکت فرسیس تامین کننده تجهیزات شبکه با بهترین قیمت و ارائه دهنده خدمات با بالاترین کیفیت.
Hi, welcome to this latest episode of Lightboard Lessons, and today we're going to reshoot a previous video on the Global Traffic Manager, which is now Big IP DNS. And so let's, before we get into all the load balancing algorithms, which we'll consider for future videos, we want to go over just the basics of how the Big IP DNS and the Local Traffic Manager interact. And so when you have, let's see, clients out here in the internet, and you come in to, let's say, the data center, and then say we have another data center over here. We'll call that data center 2, and of course, come that way from the cloud. In any particular data center, you have your local traffic manager devices in either an HA pair, or you have a device cluster where you have many active in a standby, or whatever your scenario is. And so you have your infrastructure layer here. You probably have some routers and firewalls in here, and so we'll have your LTMs, and so those connect down through infrastructure to your web farms, and so that's sideways. So, any number of web farms in here, and say this is hundreds of servers or whatever. And so on the front side of these LTMs, you have virtual servers. So you say V1, V2, and then that's mirrored over here on this standby. Or maybe you have a completely different business unit that maybe has an LTM over here. And maybe that's in a sync group with this LTM in the middle, but you have another V3 and V4. Okay, and so all these different virtual servers exist for any number of applications that sit here in the back end. And over here in this other data center would be hopefully at least a highly available experience for those same apps. So in this case, we have LTM, and then we have another LTM for a different business unit, and just assume this one also is an HA. And then you have other virtual servers over here. We'll call this V5 and V6, and then V7 and V8. Okay. And so when it comes to bringing these clients to these particular virtual servers, whether it's IP or IPv4 or V6, that's where DNS comes into play. And so traditionally, before the world of load balancing, and even with some basic load balancing, you can serve those records with one or more addresses. And so in the old days, you would say, I have that service is available on 4 addresses, so I'm going to go ahead and send all 4 addresses out to the client. That's still possible, and then the client's just going to pick one of those from the query that they receive. And of course, it'll cache it for however long your TTL is. When that TTL expires, it'll go out to the LDNS servers that sit out here in the cloud. So you have LDNS times, however many LDNS servers that these clients have access to, and that's dependent on their infrastructure that from their provider. And then those LDNS servers will cache as well for as long as these records tell it to cache. And then when that cache expires, it's going to come out and it's going to look for an address. And that's where, on our end, the GTM comes into play. And so if we extend this data center, I'm sorry, it's an old habit, GTM, actually F5-BIG IP DNS. So we'll just put the DNS in there over here in this data center as well. And in the GTM, the F5-BIG IP DNS will respond to a particular query. So say this client is looking up devcentral.f5.com. And so they're asking that question. And so they're going to ask that of their own local cache. If it doesn't have it, it will come to the LDNS. And if the LDNS doesn't have it, then it will, based upon how we set up the start of authority for F5.com, it will eventually make its way to our F5 DNS device. And in here, this is where the configuration, like for your local traffic managers, you have your pool member, your virtual server. The DNS side, it starts with your server. And so let me, actually, we'll start with data center. And the data center you would define here. And then the server would actually be this LTM. You can use third-party devices as well, but we'll stick with F5. And so your server would be one of these LTMs. And then you have virtual servers from those servers that will then be either discovered or manually added to the configuration for GTM. And then that becomes the construct for pool. So just like at the LTM level where you have individual services as pool members, here you have a virtual server as the service in a pool. And so if we have, say we have one particular app and all four of these virtual servers are in that particular app, we can say that we'll put these virtual servers in that pool. And then V1, V2, V5, and V6. And so this would be, let's call that pool 1. And then pool 1 would be part of a wide IP, which we would define. It could be a wildcard. You don't have to put devcentral.f5.com. But this wide IP would be listening, just like a virtual server is listening for a particular IP port combination. The GTM listener is, the F5 DNS listener is listening for this FQDN. And so when it receives that, there will be potentially a LB decision here. So if I had more pools, say that in this particular one I have a pool 2, a pool 1, and a pool 3, at this level it's going to make a LB decision for which pool I want of virtual servers I want to send it to. And then within the pool, there's also an LB decision that is going to be made here. And so it's a tiered decision, whereas on LTM, it is just a singular decision at the pool level. With GTM, it is the LB decision at the wide IP level, and then the LB decision at the pool level. And so, you know, that's the basics before we get into the LB decisions themselves on the tiering of how those decisions are made and how the overall architecture of the infrastructure works when it comes to global traffic management. And so hopefully this has been helpful, and we are going to get into the load balancing algorithms in our next set of videos. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you out there in the community.